Hi everyone, welcome to the first lesson on fabrics and textiles, and we're starting with natural fibres. We're going to roll it all the way back, find out where the fibres come from, what they do, how they are then used by attractive people to spin into yarns. Sorry, I used this picture in school, I thought it was quite funny. And then it's woven into fabrics, obviously, and then we are finishing the fabrics, and finishing is like printing and dyeing and all that, and then finally it goes into garment manufacture. So taking it all back right to the fiber, we're just going to look at what they're actually made out of. So we've got here an example of a seed pod plant, cotton, where the fibers just spring from the seed pod to make the fibers. And then we've got silk, which comes from an animal, in this case the silkworm. And we've also got hair-like fibers, so from wool, for example, and sheep. And then on the other hand, we've got bast fibers, which come from plants, okay, or vegetables. And we also have more hair-like fibers than wool, and we've got as example here the Angora rabbit and the cashmere goat. So we've got all sorts of different fibers. Now let's look at what they're made out of. All the plant fibers are made out of cellulose. They've got that organic compound. It's just like a tree. So cotton will burn, linen, which is from the flax plant, will burn. Animal fibers are made from protein, basically like hair, and we all know what happens when hair is like, when you try burning hair, it stinks terribly. It's not a very flammable material. So we've got wool and silk, and again the Angora little rabbit here, and the cashmere goat. There's of course more. They are all organic compound protein fibers. All fibers come in different lengths. Some are very short and some are very long, and the longer actually the better. So cotton is between 1 and 6 centimeters long. So the really short fibers are sometimes also called lint fibers, and that's your cheap t-shirts sometimes are made out of that. Not very good at all, and I constantly have holes in mine where my jeans button is because it rubs on it. You've got the flax plant again, which makes linen, is 25 centimeters to 1 meter 50. That's just under 1.5 yards. So very, very long, and actually one of the strongest fibers there is. That's why it's so ideal for bedding. And then we've got the wool fibers between 7 and 12 centimeters in length. So that's pretty long, and it's actually really, really good. The Angora rabbit has got 6 to 10 centimeters, again, a very good fiber. We know long is important, especially when you make knitting yarns. And then the cashmere goat is even longer than that, and that's really like silk. And some places you open up the goat's hair, like on the side of it and on the underbelly, and oh my god, it's just like silk. It just shines like gold. And all these short fibers are called staple fibers because they're short. Silk is the exception to this. Silk is what we call an endless fiber, and or filament. It can be up to 1 kilometer long. So you've got the worm feasts on the mulberry bush, then goes into a cocoon. You kill off the worm inside in hot water, and then you unravel the cocoon and you take off the glue that holds it all together, and you get a beautiful fiber, which is silk. And here the example is a dress made out of taffeta silk. Silk absorbs color very, very well, and so it is so shiny and so beautiful. And all of these endlessly long fibers are called filament fibers. And here's a bit of light relief. Here's a lady from New Zealand, and she's shearing an Angora rabbit. And I used to show the whole video of this to my class when I was still a school teacher, just to show how it can be done really sympathetically. She is rearing them all on her farm. She knows them all. They all have names. None of them are slaughtered. And this particular rabbit is 4 years old. and she's been sharing it many times throughout the year, and he knows what's happening, and she's cuddling him and she's talking to him, and she's actually very, very gentle. And Angora, as we know, is used for knitting yarn. Now, when you get your knitting yarn in Angora from China, I guarantee you that they don't do it like this. There is some horrible things going on in those factories, and those animals, really, it's like torture. It's not very nice at all. And they have no life. It's a bit like a chicken farm. And so you can see how kindly she is with the rabbit, cutting his little tail, etc. So do watch out where you buy your Angora knitting. You can also watch this video on full length. The link is underneath this in the video description. And we move on to see what we remember now. So natural fibers, animal. Main compound is protein. For example, like silk and wool and other hair fibers. And a good example is cashmere, Angora, mohair, merino, etc. So then we've got the plant and vegetable ones, and they're made out of cellulose, which is like a tree, and you've got linen, cotton, jute, hemp, Ramy, kapok. Oh, there's so many of them. And really nice example of the very long fibers is Indian and Egyptian cotton, of course. Now we're going to have a quick look at wool. Wool is not wool, right? They're very different. Merino wool, for example, is very soft. Lamb's wool is softer, but doesn't have to be a very high quality wool just because it's lamb's wool. In fact, it could be quite coarse because it comes from the Cheviot sheep, which is from the Scotland Highlands. For example, it's reared elsewhere as well, but it's much, much more coarse. Whilst you get your wool from a cashmere goat, then it's very, very soft. And if you get the long lengths there, you've got a fantastic fibre. Wool is extremely hard wearing. It's got crimp inside it, which makes it also more elastic. It's got fantastic good handle, drapes well, and you can blend it with all sorts of fibres, very often with synthetic fibres, to make it even more durable and more crease resistant. Well, obviously the other way around. Not the wool needs the crease resistance, but whatever you add it to, like, it will be more crease resistant. And then we come to my little friends here that my students used to always get confused. The Angora goat, which makes the mohair, and the Angora rabbit, which makes the Angora. So generally speaking, wool shrinks. That's because it's got scales on the outside of each fiber, and if you put soap and hot water in it, these scales will interlock and you cannot pull them apart, and that is why then you get a felted garment. You can of course buy felt, and that's really warm because you couldn't get any denser than that, but then if you have a felt, you have no drape anymore, so you get loaden and all those sort of things. Now, wool takes a very long time to dry. It's got very low flammability, and that's why it was historically used as fire blankets. And then it's also an excellent insulator. I want to just show you a little picture of the crimp that we have got in a wool fiber, so you can see that, you know, of course it would be more elastic. Now let's see what we remember from all of this in a true and false little quiz. Is wool a staple fiber? Yes, it is a staple fiber. Wool washes well. Is that true or is that false? No, you can't wash wool other than by hand. It will shrink and it will felt. Wool has natural crimp, and fabrics made from wool are never smooth. Ooh, true or false? Of course, that's false. The crimp gives the fabric elasticity, but it can still be totally smooth. So you get some fantastically beautiful wool shirt fabrics, etc., or coats and stuff. Wool is easily blended with other fibers is of course true. Wool creases easily is false. It springs back into shape when exposed to moisture. Just hang your coat into your shower after you had a shower and the creases will drop out. Wool comes from sheep. That is false. Wool comes not only from sheep but from goats, camels, rabbits. and wool is strong when wet and takes a long time to dry is of course true. So now let's have a look back at these little animals and see if we remember what they were. Did you? That was the Angora goat, which makes the beautiful mohair, which is usually used for knitting. The Angora rabbit, which makes Angora, which is really nice in jumpers. Merino, which is from the sheep, and cashmere, which is from a goat. Okay, so what does it actually look like in a garment? So we've got here the lovely mohair jumpers, which I remember from the 70s and really hated. They made me really itchy. My mum used to knit these beautiful mohair sweaters. They were all the rage, but oh my God, they weren't very good on the skin. My favorite, especially when you're allergic, and I am, it's the least allergenic fiber, is the cashmere fiber. It's absolutely fantastic. It will not cause as many reactions as other wool fibers. It also has got the shine to it. It can be very fine. It's almost like silk, but it's a wool, and I absolutely love it. And little Magdalena's red coat, the video is going to come out very shortly, is made out of a cashmere and merino wool mix, which we can see on the right hand side. The merino wool is really fine fibers as well, so it's got the same sort of texture but not the same sort of quality. So together they make a hit combo, but on its own it's really nice to wear over stuff as well. So now let's look at a few of the bust plants which you might not be familiar with, but it's really nice when you go into a shop and you actually know what they are. The Ramy plant is a bust fiber, and when you look at the fiber here under the microscope, you can see that it's like totally smooth. And that is one of the strongest threads you can get. So it's made into sewing thread, but fishing nets as well. But very, very important is that it is so silk-like. It has the same low elasticity, etc. But because it's made out of cellulose, you can wash it. So you've got a fiber which looks and feels like silk, but you can wash it, which is fantastic. It is very expensive to produce as well, but it is slightly cheaper than silk, and I think it's beautiful. It's used all over the Middle East for very fine garments. Next up, jute. That is one of the fibers that is very, very popular because it's really cheap to produce. So a lot of the stuff you see in IKEA, all the carpets and stuff, will be made with jute. So you get your sacks, your bags, your, like I said, your carpets, etc. The bast is from the skin of the plant, and in linen it's the fibrous stem that we take to make the fibers. So there's a little bit of a difference between the two of those. The fibers are off-white and brown, so sometimes you just get it in its natural brown color, and then we also call that Hessian cloth, and it's very recognizable. Hemp is something that you might not be so familiar with. It's actually harvested from the cannabis plant, but you cannot roll up your t-shirt and smoke it. Please don't do that. It's one of those that because it's cannabis, it has a bit of a stigma, but it's actually a really fantastic fiber. It is soft, so you can make t-shirts out of it. It's a bit thicker, so it's quite durable, and you can make hats and shoes and all sorts with it. And now commercial success has actually increased over the last years because more people want natural fibers. So what does it look like? Let's recap this. We got the plant here that make the rucksacks and the shoes, and it's almost like a really long leaf shape, and then we've got the rounder leaf shape which makes beautiful silk-like clothing. Again, you can make t-shirts as well, anything you like. And then we've got the very coarse ones which can make bags and carpets, etc. So what were they called? Ta-da! Hemp. Ta-da! Ramy. Did you get it right? And the last one then has to be jute. So let's see what we know. This is like my school quiz, isn't it? It's often known as fleece or coat. And that, of course, we all know. It's wool. It has fine hairs and comes from a seed pod, and that is cotton. It comes from a fibrous stem. That has to be linen. It's cultivated from the cannabis plant, you'll never forget it. Hemp. The fibres are unraveled from a cocoon. Everyone will know. Silk, of course. Right, so those are some of the natural fibres in a nutshell. I'm back next week when we're going to look at the man-made fibres, then yarns, then weaving, then the actual fabrics. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.